One consequence of your theories is that we are, as human beings, very, very rigidly pre-programmed. There are certain things we can understand, certain things we can communicate, and anything that falls outside that, we simply can't. Is that so?
That's certainly correct.
So, I mean, in a way, this is a rather alarming doctrine. I mean, it certainly contravenes the way we want to feel about ourselves.
Well, that may be an immediate reaction, but I think it's not the correct reaction. In fact, while it's true that our genetic program rigidly constrains us, I think the more important point is that the existence of that rigid constraint is what provides the basis for our freedom and creativity. And the reason...
What you mean, it's only because we're pre-programmed that we can do all the things we can do.
Exactly. The point is that if we really were plastic organisms without an extensive pre-programming, then the state that our mind achieves would in fact be a reflection of the environment, which means it would be extraordinarily impoverished. Fortunately for us, we're rigidly pre-programmed with extremely rich systems that are part of our biological endowment. Correspondingly, a small amount of rather degenerate experience allows a kind of a great leap into a rich cognitive system, essentially uniform in a community, and in fact roughly uniform for the species.
Which would have developed over countless evolutionary ages through the biological system, evolutionary process.
Right. The basic system itself developed over long periods of evolutionary development. We don't know how, really. But for the individual, it's present. As a result, the individual is capable of, with a very small amount of evidence, of constructing an extremely rich system, which allows him to act in the free and creative fashion, which in fact is normal for humans. We can say anything that we want over an infinite range. Other people will understand us, though they've heard nothing like that before. We're able to do that precisely because of that rigid programming. But short of that, we would not be able to at all.
What account are you able to give of creativity? If we are pre-programmed in the way you say, then how is creativity a possibility for us?
Well, here I think one has to be fairly careful. I think we can say a good deal about the nature of the system that is acquired, the state of knowledge that is attained. We can say a fair amount about the biological, the basis in the initial state of the mind for the acquisition of this system. But when we turn to a third question, namely, how is this system used? How are we able to act creatively? How can we decide to say things that are new but not random, that are appropriate to occasions but not under the control of stimuli? When we ask these questions, we really enter into a realm of mystery where human science, at least so far, and maybe in principle, does not reach. We can say a fair amount about the principles that make it possible for us to behave in our normal creative fashion, but as soon as questions of will or decision or reason or choice of action, when those questions arise, human science is at a loss. It has nothing to say about them as far as I can see. These questions remain in the obscurity that in which they were in classical antiquity.
Would you also accept this, or not, that having arrived at our present situation across millions of years of evolution, we must have been going through a continual process of innovation and new adaptation and development of new abilities, dispositions, organs, etc. Might we not still be, as it were, plastic at the edges? Might we not still be developing and changing and genuinely evolving, if only on the margin?
Well, I think one has to be, again, very cautious here, because while it's true in a very vague sense to say, it's correct to say that the systems that we now have developed through evolution and through natural selection, it's important to recognize how little we are saying when we say that. For example, it is certainly not necessarily the case that every particular trait that we have is the result of specific selection. That is, that we were selected for having that. In fact, there are striking examples to the contrary, or at least apparent examples to the contrary. Say, take, for example, our capacity to deal with abstract properties of the number system. Now, that's a distinctive human capacity, as distinctive as the capacity for language. Any normal human, in fact, down to pathological levels, can comprehend the properties of the number system and can move very far in understanding their deep properties. But it's extremely difficult to believe that this capacity was the result of specific selection. That is, it's hard to believe that people who were a little better at proving theorems of number theory had more children, let's say. That didn't happen. In fact, through most of human evolution, in fact, essentially all of human evolution, this capacity it would have been impossible to know that this capacity even existed. The contingencies that allowed it to be exercised never arose. Nevertheless, the trait is there. The capacity is there. The mental organ, if you like, has developed. Presumably, it has developed as a concomitant of some other properties of the brain which may have been selected. For example, we can speculate, say, that that increase in brain size was a factor in differential reproduction, hence in evolution. And it may be that for physical law, because of physical laws that we presently don't know, that an increase in brain size under the specific conditions of human evolution simply leads necessarily to a system which has the capacity to deal with properties of the number system. Well, then that's a matter of physics, ultimately. And then the mind that evolves, the brain that evolves, will have this capacity, but not because it was achieved through selection. Now, I think it's at least likely that something of the sort is true of human language. And, I mean, surely if it were dysfunctional, it wouldn't have been maintained. It's obviously functional. But it's a long leap to claim that the specific structures of language are themselves the result of specific selection, and it's a leap that I don't think is particularly plausible.